Hello everyone, I'm back with a new episode of the story of Van, who managed to develop a small village and turn it into a great empire. If you haven't seen the previous parts, hero, you'll find the link to the first part in the description. Don't forget to like and comment, and let's continue the story. We see Van afterwards feeling happy about having cows in the village because he will be able to produce milk and cheese. Then, we see Esparta telling Van that he feels like Van has forgotten his studies for a while, and the time has come to go back to studying again. Van asks him, "Do you still remember? I don't like studying at all," and tells him that if he goes back to studying, he might pass away and die. Esparta tells him not to worry, as no one dies from studying. Suddenly, Ort and the adventurers arrive, and Van asks them if they finished their hunting mission. They say no, they left the mission and came because there is something important. They discovered the location of a dungeon. Van is surprised because he wanted to avoid knowing the dungeon's location, since once it's known, the Empire must be notified about the matter. Here we see Esparta saying that they must send a messenger to the kingdom to inform them of the discovered dungeon. Of course, Van is afraid because if the location of the new dungeon near the village becomes known, many adventurers will come to explore it, and everything Van has done will be revealed, and his father will find out that he developed the village. Ort apologizes to him, saying he found it by accident. Van says it's no problem at all and asks the fat adventurer to be their messenger and go inform the kingdom, since he is known as the village scout, so it will be said that he was the one who discovered it. Ort says he knows the scout discovered it, but he prefers to be with him while going to the Empire. However, Van tells him to stay here because he wants him to explore all the areas around the dungeon, telling him his reward will be a gold coin. Immediately, Ort tells his friend to go ahead to the kingdom, and the fat adventurer feels that Ort and the rest of his friends sold him out for the sake of money. Van doesn't want to upset the adventurer since he's traveling alone, so he decides to give him a dagger made of rare mithril stones. The adventurer takes it happily, while Ort is very jealous and annoyed, wishing he had one like it. We then see the adventurer on his way to the royal capital, very happy with the dagger, saying it made the journey easier and made him not feel the time at all. Suddenly, he finds an overturned carriage and 3 rock monsters standing in front of him. He says to himself that normally these monsters would represent a bit of a challenge to fight, but since he has this dagger, it will be easy. He immediately attacks them and succeeds in cutting them down and finishing them off easily. He is amazed by the dagger's power, being able to finish them with one strike. A girl then appears from the overturned carriage named Flamira, thanking him for saving her from the monsters that wanted to kill her. The adventurer feels embarrassed because the girl keeps praising and glorifying him after he saved her. He tells her he is just an ordinary adventurer and doesn't need all this praise, but she says she felt his movements during the fight were very fast and distinctive. She then tells him she is going to the royal capital and hopes to return his favor one day. He tells her he is also going to the royal capital, picks her up, seats her on his horse, and says his horse will be happy she sat on it instead of him. He asks her what she's going to do in the royal capital, and she says her father was a nobleman but unfortunately died, and his lands were stolen, so she is going to work as a maid there. He tells her he is also just getting by and lives in a distant village, and he thinks she should come live with him in his village, confident she will find suitable work there. Later, we return to Van and see him talking to Esparta, saying that since the dungeon's location is known, he thinks he should build an external base outside the city for the adventurers who will come to explore it. Esparta tells him that the base he will build needs a governor because Van will be in the city and the base will be external, so someone must manage it while he is away. Van offers Esparta to be the governor of the external base he will build. Esparta says there's no problem, but he must establish a new night squad to maintain order in the new base. Van says there's no problem in appointing these knights to be responsible for the new base and naming the squad the Esparta Squad, since he will be its new leader. Esparta feels that Van wants to get rid of him and keep him away from the village so he doesn't have to learn and continue his studies. But Van keeps joking and says not at all. Rather, he sees him as the most suitable person for this task. The next day, Van starts cooperating with the village residents to build the external base and feels they are very cooperative. He says that in this way, they will finish building the entire base within a month. Later, Van asks Dee what he thinks about recruiting a group of new residents and making them part of his team. Dee likes the idea very much, but when he proposes the matter to the city residents, He is surprised that they made a contract with Esparta and are now working with him in his new squad. Then the adventurer returns after informing the royal capital of the dungeon's location, and Van is surprised that a girl is with him. He asks who she is, and the adventurer says she is a poor girl he met on the road who unfortunately has no place to stay, so he decided she should come live with them in the village. Van begins to introduce himself, and she also introduces herself, saying a group of monsters attacked her on her way to the capital, and the hero next to her saved her with great skill. The adventurer tells Van the credit goes to the dagger he gave him, but she says she saw great agility and skill as if he were a legendary hero. He feels embarrassed, thinking he's Tom Cruise. Suddenly, Van is shocked that a group of adventurers is coming toward them, thinking they are bandits or thugs. But the adventurer says these are a group of adventurers who, as soon as they knew the dungeon's location, decided to be the first to come explore it and take the resources first. We see the adventurers starting to mock Van and everyone present, asking what they are doing in a remote place like this, saying it's dangerous and they should go home. They tell Flamira what she is doing with these children and that it's better for her to go home. Van feels this is literally the end of the world, and these are a bunch of thugs. Kamsin tells him to calm down a bit, that they seem kind, but unfortunately their way of speaking is ignorant, which is why he sees them as thugs and criminals. But Van says their faces are terrifying and he is afraid of them. The adventurers apologize to him, saying they are sorry for scaring him. Then the adventurers ask Van what he is doing in such an isolated place, because a strong monster could appear at any moment and finish them off. Van tells them not to worry about him, as the village is close by. They ask where the village is, and Van points to his village. They are shocked and say it's impossible for that to be a village because no village has such massive giant walls. Van tells them he did that, but they don't believe him. He decides to use his magic to show them his magical ability and manages to create iron barriers. They are shocked by his great power and the strange magic he uses. Dee then comes and calls Van's name, giving him some wood to finish building. When the adventurers find out his name is Van, they say his name is widespread in the city and everyone is talking about him. They speak to him in a casual way without any respect, making Dee extremely angry. He tells them anyone who mocks him or speaks to him disrespectfully, he will finish them off. One of the adventurers doesn't like Dee's words and attacks him, but Dee, with one strike, breaks his sword. All the adventurers are shocked and afraid of his strength. Afterwards, the adventurers respect Dee and decide he should be their leader. They then gather around Van and ask him what he is doing in this remote village. Van tells them unfortunately his father kicked him out of the house, which is why he is here. Ort arrives later after exploring the area around the dungeon and is surprised that the adventurer also arrived from the kingdom, but finds the girl with him. He asks who she is, and the adventurer introduces her to them. They are surprised that this adventurer now has a female friend after no one used to pay him any attention at all. Van decides to build a big, beautiful house for the fat adventurer and Flamira. Ort gets annoyed, saying he is lucky, and wishing he had gone on that mission instead. Van then asks them about the news of the area around the dungeon. They tell him the area has no monsters at all, but its entrance has a very deep crack. Van realizes the dungeon is about 3 or 4 hours away from the village, but the problem is the environment around the dungeon is harsh, making it difficult to build anything massive or even camps. The female adventurer reassures Van, telling him not to worry, as any time he wants to go to the dungeon, they will be with him. She tells him they went to that place more than once, so they can protect him if he faces any danger there. Van says he has decided to go to the dungeon to see it, and also decided to take Kamsin and the maid with him, since Dee and Esparta are busy now. Van is surprised that the sorceress actually agrees, and despite the companions he wants to take to the dungeon, the sorceress is ready and informs Ort of the matter. Later, we see Van and Kamsin in the carriage. Kamsin feels faint and wants to go back, asking Van why he decided to go to the dungeon the very next day, saying he doesn't know what's in Van's head. During their journey, a giant tree monster appears in front of them. The adventurers with Van immediately get excited, attack the monster, and finish it off easily. They continue their way, and Ort is surprised by the beautiful natural scenery there, and there's also a giant flying monster in the sky that she sees for the first time. Suddenly, Van asks the carriage driver to stop immediately, and is surprised that they have to cross a bridge made of only 2 pieces of wood. One of the adventurers is dancing on the bridge like a fool. Van feels these adventurers are completely reckless and know nothing about safety principles. Van starts giving them lectures on safety and how to protect themselves against any danger, while they don't understand the strange things he is saying. While Van explains to the adventurers how to take care of themselves, we see the fat adventurer dancing on a tree trunk. Van tells him the trunk could break at any moment and he could fall and die. Van then decides to use his magic and builds a sturdy bridge so they can cross safely without any danger. After they cross, Van starts building a gate at the entrance of the dungeon to prevent any monsters from coming out at any time and attacking the adventurers. He starts building camps for them to camp in front of the gate. After he builds the massive camp for them, they are very happy and can't believe he can build something of such giant size. At night, they spend the whole day watching the natural scenery of the mountains. Van tells them to go to sleep because they have a mission tomorrow, but again, they don't listen to him. Van says he wishes he hadn't built the camp and had let them sleep on the ground. Suddenly, Ort calls him and points to a mithril stone. Van is surprised that mithril stone is here and thanks Ort for seeing it by chance. Van then returns to the village with the adventurers and is surprised to find Esparta standing in front of him with a smile. He feels a big disaster is waiting for him. Esparta asks to speak with him privately. Before Van enters, he tries to seek help from Kamsin and the maid, but they sell him out and tell him to go in alone. When Ort tries to intervene to defend Van, we see Esparta shouting at him, telling him to be quiet and mind his own business. He then pulls Van like a sheep and takes him inside. And with that, the episode ends for now. But the adventures of the Mage Van are not over yet. If you are excited, hero, for the rest of the story's events, don't forget to support us with a like and subscription so you receive everything new.